the walls, they call it the cotton curtain, right? And there was a lady named Harriet Tubman who said, I freed hundreds of enslaved people, and I could have freed thousands if only they had known they were slaves. And so whenever she came through, people would get people to take off on this road to freedom. She came through, and there was a certain period of time you were gone. Either you were ready to go or you were not. There was no waiting around, because the longer you waited, right, the better the chances of something going wrong. So I just say that in terms of us here this morning. I was just telling my friend that it turns out today is baby showers and preparing for weddings and other things, and people say, oh, you should have waited for this or that. And I say there is no perfect day when everybody is available to move. So this thing, Chris, I think he's saying he's just a few minutes out now. So this, matter of fact, when we start out, but even though it's a small group, people can just introduce themselves, and then we'll go on with this and waiting for them, starting from here.
Well, my name and what I do.
Yes.
My name is Etienne Douglas. I work at the Marin City Library Technology Program Coordinator. I know you. Yeah, so I've been here in the community for 20 plus years, almost 30, more than 30 years maybe, coming up on 30 years. So.
Just a baby.
Yeah. Etienne Douglas.
Oh, so are you Juanita's son?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-oh, see, it's a small word.
How y'all doing? My name is Antonio Swan. I work for AM at the library. I'm a web star. That's it.
Yes, and hello, my name is Darlene Crummy. I am a member of the Coalition for Just and Equitable California, as well as the Coalition for American Reach Bay Area, but I actually live in Fairfield.
Hi, I'm Lisa Bennett. I'm on the Sausalito Marin City School Board. I'm the president of the school board. I live in Sausalito. I'm also a member of SURG, which is showing up for racial justice. I support the cause to stop 825 Drake. So there, it's a lot.
Hi, I'm Marguerite Moriarty, and I've been involved in Marin City since George Floyd died. I'm from San Rafael, and I'm a friend of Golden Gate Village. Stop 825 Drake Avenue, and going to supervisor meetings. Maybe it's fallen on deaf ears, but at least it's taken up their time. And come to the table, which just started. And Juanita Douglas was our first speaker last week with Kathleen Cahill of Cahill Construction.
I'm Louisa Penningham, retired at Fairfax. Just coming to my mind, in the 60s I was part of CORE in San Francisco, and marched on Van Ness for a long time for CORE, now retired.
Now retired.
Do you remember CORE?
Yeah.
I mean, that goes way back, and
Congress
I was
of
a
Racial
student,
Equality.
SCORE, S-C-O-R-E, student of CORE.
Okay.
We're talking picnic and Cadillac.
And of course, the one and only.
Pardon?
Michael from Fairfax.
Michael from Fairfax. Okay.
You're trying to get educated.
Okay. Michael and Louise right here. These are good friends of mine. When my buddy Donald came down with cancer, right? Somehow we found our way back to his clinic Fairfax. And see, I still kind of get weighted down just bringing it up, but they ended up, you know, there's some top-notch people in terms of research and treatment for that, and they wound up treating my friend as if he was their child, as if he was their child.
Wow.
So they took good care of him, did their best to save him, and so for that they will forever, you know, be here for me.
Donald was a good person.
Yeah. And the book talks about people, and it says that in that day, if you can show where you gave one of my chosen even a drop of water, that puts you in a very, very special category,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So introduce yourself real quick. This is my other
I'm the
girl.
last one?
Yeah, so far.
So far, yeah, because it's still early.
Okay.
My name is Mary Lisa, everybody. And actually, I was part of the reparation when Melvin introduced it to us. We've been on board ever since. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start off again about this whole reparations thing. The education of what's happening with the state is most important. It's also most important that people are educated as to why there is such a thing as a reparations movement, or why people are asking for reparations. And it's important because just to bring the subject up turns certain people off, it angers certain people. We've been cast in such an image in this country that there's people, black and white, who don't think we deserve anything at all, or think that somehow we're wasting our time at even making a push for this. And the push for reparations has been going on ever since we so-called became free, right? When the Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1863. But the emancipation, as I understand it, it comes from a French root word, and the word means to free from your hand, but not from your control. To free from your hand, but not from this control. So this whole racial thing, as well as the reparation thing, I've said before, it's like a monster from another dimension that has followed us all the way from 1555 up to almost 2025. And people are wondering, well, how has this thing lasted so long, and why won't it go away? And sometimes we're kind of put on the spot of saying, if you people would just stop bringing it up, everything would be all right. It would go away. But it's too deeply embedded into the society for it just to go away. The only thing I think that will send it away is a thing called justice, which is also, in my opinion, the answer to the world's problems. Justice. It's hard to keep fighting and being angry and wanting to kill whatever that has shown you justice. But in order to give justice, you have to look at the crime, right? And I think the crime is so deep and horrible that it's hard for a lot of people to look at, right? Especially when it looks as if I'm the one that's going to be blamed for the crime. And you're saying, I wasn't there, I had nothing to do with it. And that's true. So part of the education is in understanding the crime to the point that it helps to erase that, I guess, guilt or that feeling that I was responsible for it. We have to look at it impartially. We have to look at it, we have to stand outside and look at what was the crime. And it's so horrible, even me sometimes, and starting to look at my life as a little boy in Louisiana and what I saw a lot of the remnants of it, right? Because it hadn't gone away, except on paper, So you're looking at somebody who has spent time in cotton fields, I mean, early in the morning when dew was still on the ground, and they had us in the fields because when the dew was out, the cotton weighed a little bit more. Not a whole lot, but wet cotton weighs more than dry cotton. But you had to go early because in Louisiana, by the time that hot southern Louisiana sun blazed up around 7:30, it's already 80 degrees, right? So often you're out there, you know, no hat, you know, no brakes, and it's an all-day job. One of my cousins had sent me an email last Black History Month or before, and I happened to run across it again, and I hadn't paid attention to it before, but she was telling me how in 1986 they were still picking cotton for like 2 cents a pound, and I had to read that several times to believe what I was, and I almost cried, right? Because we were away from there, right? And sometimes when you're away from a situation, well, it looks different looking at it from over here than actually being out there in it. So to look at what is due for reparations, and I think I said this before, part of the education is helping people to understand that, look, this is not welfare, this is not a giveaway, this is not a freebie, but a debt that the country owes, right? Because the way they're starting to put it out there is like, it's a fear tactic. It's like, I get to come and take your home, I get to come and go into your bank account and take stuff that you've struggled and worked for all your lives, right? I mean, it's hard for somebody to tell you you're privileged when you can say, I've worked my ass off for this. What are you talking about, right? And, oh, Lord. Oh, Lord. Can everybody say amen? Christopher has arrived, right?
Oh, you're
Right. And, listen, and I was, when I went to pick up the coffee this morning, I was telling Michael I had ordered coffee for the coffee drinkers, but so many people were at the Marin City Starbucks, the machine broke down. So I paid them and they sent me to Mill Valley, and I got there and there were twice as many people there as was in Marin City. And I thought about what Dick Gregory told me once. He said, everybody's worried about drugs, this or that type. He said, let America wake up one morning and there's a coffee shortage. He said, you will really see something then. By noon, they'll have to call out the National Guard, right? Right? So this thing that we're trying to put together here, I was, you know, a lot of the ladies as part of our thing were busy this morning with other events that's taking place. And in putting together, getting everything set up, it reminded me again of how important women are to the organization of things, right? Very, very important. And it's kind of like we live in a world where there's this war of the roses, you know, men and women are fighting, I guess now more than ever in the world in time. And we're told men need to think more like women and women need to think more like men. We don't. We need to think like what we are, because nature gave a woman so much of man and man so much of woman that we just developed that and not expect each other to do the same things, because men are wired like this. When we have a woman and children, all we want to know is that we have you in a safe, secure, warm, dry place with food and education and medical care for the children, right? All of those little details, women are more detail oriented. We can become a little more detail oriented, but we just want to make sure that you are all right, and when I come home in the evening, you know, unless it's been a real crisis, don't meet me at the door with the problems of the day, because a man who's been out working construction or any other type of working all day, he's not just tiptoeing through the world and just out enjoying himself with no problem. There's a lot of pressure with what men have to do, and there's a lot of stress and pressure with what women have to do, right? And we have to be able to share that where it's needed without blaming each other for not taking more of my load or whatever. And so it's the same when it comes, I mention that as a way of when it comes to putting together a coalition like we're looking at, of men, women, black and white, right? You gotta see beyond what the world is putting out here for us, you know, how much of it is natural occurrence and how much of it is being orchestrated to keep us at odds with each other. Like I say, the thing, first of all, about already making white America think that reparations is us going into their pockets for what they worked hard for, you know? Now, many had certain opportunities, like I'll say this, then I'll stop. You wonder how this stuff has lasted so long, and in doing this little research of looking at the companies that came into being as a result of slavery, you know, looking at Wells Fargo and Yale and Harvard and, you know, all of the places that we just take for granted, you know, somebody came up with and worked hard and established a business. But most of these colleges, universities that we know of, they were established with monies from the slave trade and from the plantation owners, setting up schools for their children, their sons, because, you know, I don't know how long white women have been able to go to school, or they were only able to go up to a certain point. So in trying to answer the question of how has this stuff lasted for so long, I ran across this thing. It said universities such as Harvard, Yale, Penn, Columbia, Rutgers, blah, 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 not only sought out and accepted monies from slave owners and traders, but in turn helped to create scientific and systematic racism, right? So the colleges, you already live in a society where there's slavery, where these people are less, they're not complete human beings. So when you help to finance the colleges, and you've got the professors, and you're sending your bright minds there, they're developing scientific and systematic ways to reinforce this junk, right? So if we wonder how it has been passed all the way down, it's been melted into the institutions, and we had nothing to do with it, and we're operating under and with it, and having no idea that we're being bombarded with certain things. So a lot of us are zombies now, right? And you know, Hollywood has us with this image of zombies as mindless, you know, just walking around, right? But if you have no idea who you are or the contributions that your people have made to society and the world like all other people, then you're in a zombie state, looking to belong somewhere, looking to prove that you're worthy, and dealing with people that have been told that they are not only zombies, but they're lazy zombies, not too bright zombies, right? Dangerous zombies, right? Who deserve nothing, right? And when generations have been kind of fed that image, right? You only know what you see and what you hear. I went to the back doors as a little boy in Louisiana. Whenever you went to visit a white person, you didn't knock on the front door. You went to the back, right? And so it was a shock coming to California, because they say, man, if you go in some white person's backyard knocking on the door or the window, you could get shot or something, right? You don't do that. But we had to go to the back door. That was part of the superiority, inferiority thing.
Or side doors.
Side doors, you know about that. She's from Louisiana too. Stepping off the sidewalk, right? And don't let a good-looking white woman walk by and you happen to look around. You know, you could end up
Doing life in prison.
beaten, jail, prison because you look. So imagine, you know, you white women got a lot to be mad about. Good-looking white women, you can't even look at them, but yet, I would say, looking at the people in this room, don't care how dark we are, if you can go back to your grandparents or great-grandparents, my great-grandfather looks more like my buddy Michael here than he does me, right? Because he's a plantation baby, right? So when people talk about how long ago it's been, oh, it's been too long ago, he was born in 1863, 2 years before the end of the Civil War, and he died when I was a little boy in the 1950s, right? So I didn't know him that well, but my older brothers and sisters and my mother and everybody knew, because it's not that long. 1860 to 1900 is 40 years. 1900 to 1950s is another 50 years. So when I was a little boy, it was not at all unusual to see men and women who were 80, 90, 102, 103 years old, 104. One of my relatives just passed away who was 102, right? So when we do this thing about how long ago it's been, and damn how long ago it's been, you know, reparations is a debt, and again, a debt comes about as a result of you've either made a loan somewhere, you've gotten somebody to work for you, and you owe them for working for you, or, you know, you've caused some damage, like all of us, if we run into somebody with our car, we're responsible for the damages to that other person's car, right? So when we look at this whole situation, right, and begin to assess what are the damages, what actually happened, you know, not to necessarily place blame on each other, but again, to step outside of it like people on a jury, because you're going to end up having to vote on this somewhere down the line. So when you consider the evidence, right, you have to render, you know, your verdict. Either there's guilt or responsibility there on somebody, and in this case, the government. I did this thing on the back. You guys have it, where it just shows, you know, that at the end of slavery, where there were, at the end of the war, where there were like 4 or 5 million people still in slavery, right? So I just did some math, and I used to be real good. I might not be that good anymore, but it just showed, you know, being paid 1 cent an hour, how much those people, those 5 million, would be owed after, you know, 310 years of slavery. And 1 cent an hour, it comes out to $72,540,000,000. That's 1 penny. A penny, right? During that time. And the other one shows $1 an hour, right? And why I did times 310 years, because people have different calculations as to how long slavery lasted, right? But according to the congressional records in Washington, the first slaves were brought to America, the first African people were brought here in 1555, right? And they came on a ship named Jesus of Lubeck, right? So those of us who came up in the church have heard the old people talk about, you can have the world and all of its gold, just give me Jesus, right? But originally it wasn't talking about Jesus. It was people who went to the waters and said, give me Jesus, meaning that boat that brought me in to take me back home, right? So there's a lot that has to be covered. Some people won't be able to take it. It'll be too much for them. But again, in order for us to heal as black people, in order for present day white people to heal, right? We've got to face and vomit out the truth of what has brought us to this point. It's not just what we see today, but what led up to it. How can you tell a woman or a boy who was molested or raped, you know, like as an 8, 9-year-old, well, you 45, 50, you should be over it by now. It takes treatment, it takes healing, especially when we're angry with each other, and as you say, none of us had anything to do with it, but there are still people around who, because of the programming, just hate the sight of us, hate our shadow, right? And so we welcome our friends, the members of the, what did we give you guys a new title before? Overground Railroad Workers, right? Overground. They had the Underground Railroad Workers, you know, doing slavery, but for whatever reason, there have always been those whites that supported, you know, black causes. And again, not necessarily because they were in love with black people, they just believed that human beings should be treated a certain way and fairly compensated for whatever's going on. But you can't, it's hard to take that position, I guess, if you have no real information. And in 2024, black people are still fighting to have black history taught, right? So if we don't know or know very little of our history, our friends at the same time were taught that we had no history. So you say, well, you people never, I like you, but you never done anything. You never made any contributions, right? So that adds to the conflict sometimes. But long story short, we have Mr. Chris Lodgson, who's the chief trainer for Northern California, information officer, and we'll be into why. And on here you have, you know, a few of the corporations and businesses and banks that came to prominence as a result of slavery. Lodgson of London, which we know today is a place where people like Liz Taylor and Ann Margaret and those people insured the dancers Fred Astaire, they insured their legs through Lloyd's of London case. Anything ever happened to Fred's legs, you know, he would be paid. But Lloyd's of London is a huge institution. But prior to slavery, Lloyd's of London was a little coffee shop about the size of this room. So they made their money from insuring, you know, the ships and actually owning slaves as well, right? So I don't think you guys have to worry too much about going in your pockets. These people not only have all of our money from slavery, right? But they also have probably your money, because after slavery, where we were being paid a nickel, you guys were being paid a dime, right? So all poor people matter not a damn to these huge institutions, and until somebody makes them to pay, and it was said that until the black problem of justice is solved in America, there won't be peace for other people anywhere on the planet, right? Because ours is the big crime, so huge that you try to hide it and act as if, you know, it lasted, but thank God it's over and we've moved on to something else. But it don't work like that, because everybody knows something is wrong, even if they don't know what it is, right? Even if they don't know what the conflict is, we know that something is wrong. So we're going to be going after what is rightfully due the descendants, right? And it may it's going to take a while, but even in between time, we're dealing with the state, but also, this is the last point, you may have to wind up dealing with your local cities, and counties, because after slavery, wherever black people went to try to rebuild, to regather their lives, to put it all back together, those elements followed us. And wherever we developed towns, you know, and communities that started to prosper, they just couldn't stand the sight of it. And they burned and looted and killed, and the cities sometimes flooded the towns. And, you know, matter of fact, in New York, what's the big park?
Central Park.
Central Park used to be a black township, right? There are people buried under the park right now, right? So if you don't know, you don't know, right?
Lake Lanier also.
Lake Lanier, you name it. Marguerite just finished watching Rosewood, you know. And anyway, Chris, come on up. Because what we want today is just an update since the committee submitted their findings to the legislature, you know, last year, right? We've kind of been, you know, in a neutral state. So we want to find out what has happened since the findings were submitted to the legislature and what we do and where we go from here. So this is Mr. Chris Lodgson, Northern California, right?
Good. Well, thank you, brother, as always. I'm going to do a couple things here to start, but first I just want to give this brother some flowers. This is, you know, I have benefited, I think we've all benefited greatly from this brother's commitment, dedication, consistency, and energy for reparations. I'm going to go through my stuff, but I just wanted to thank you, brother, and appreciate you. If we could put our hands together one more time for Mr. Malik here, please. Also, so I'm gonna try something new, and y'all, if you know me, I am very interactive with the stuff. So if I could, then I'm gonna ask you to help. If we could, let's rearrange here. Let's make a circle. Okay. All right. Make a circle. I want to try this. All right. Make a circle. Yep, doesn't have to be a big circle. All right. Doesn't have to be huge. I'll help out.
We ain't got that many people.
Right over. No, not yet. Not yet. It's all good. And let's get closer. I'm gonna ask everybody to grab a seat. Yeah, in the circle. All right. Boom, boom. Let's do it like family. All right. Let's do it. I'm gonna be give everybody. Then I'm gonna ask if we could also give everyone one of those. Yeah, I got some new stuff. I gotta take the rest of LA. I'm going to LA. I got you. All right, join us in the circle. All right, let's get cool. So I'm gonna start with this overview of what we'll do today, and then we'll take maybe a short break after, and then let's go right into questions and your thoughts, your ideas, based on what you heard, and hopefully that's perfect. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, appreciate it. Thank you all for coming out on a Saturday. All right, good to see you. Michael, good to see you again, brother. Good to see you again. Family too. Peace. All right.
Oh, this is good.
Yeah. All right. Make sure everybody gets one. Thank you, brother. Appreciate that. And wait for my good brother Malik. Okay, there we go. We're good. All right. So I'll talk about first who I am, who we are, just to do some of the basics. Then I'll talk about where we are now, how we got here, a little bit more about where we are now. We'll pause, then we'll get to your questions. How does that sound? Good? Okay, cool. So, and I think we scheduled to be here till 1. We may actually get out a little early, but we'll see. Depends on how well I can answer your questions. So I am, as mentioned, Chris Lodgson. I am, all of the things that Malik said, and all of the things that are on the flyer, but I'm also lead organizer with the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California, which is California's first, only, and still leading grassroots, descendant-led, volunteer-led, statewide organization born just for reparations and reparative justice for descendants of those who were enslaved in the United States. And I'm joined here by my good colleague Darlene, who represents one of our our Bay Area partner, the American Redress Coalition of California, the Bay Area. And CJ, just a little bit more about us. We are again, statewide organization made up of different organizations who just focus on and fight for reparations. That's all we do. That's all we are about. In 2019 and 2020, we helped write the final version of the law that created the California Reparations Task Force. And I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. And then after that, we went on to help recommend people to the state task force. After the law was passed, we helped recommend people to the state task force. And then we went on to help the task force do its job for 2 years. And we'll talk more about what that job is and all of the things surrounding that too. And now we're working, of course, to make sure that people are educated and then activated and involved in what's going on now for California reparations. So that's a little bit about us. I'm not gonna go too much into our details. Of course, all of that stuff is available on our website, www.cjec-official.org. All of the cards you have a QR code that will take you to that website. We can learn all about our organization because you're here to hear about reparations, not organizations today. So, where are we now? Let's start right there. Where are we now? So, I'm going to start how I usually start because it's still the truth. We are right now closer to reparations than we've ever been here in California specifically. Some cities, counties too. Federal government's a whole different story. I'm going to leave that for the people who talk about federal government stuff. I'm going to talk mostly about the state stuff today, but we are closer to reparations than we've ever been as a people, and that's largely because of the work of people all across the state of California who have taken it upon themselves and taken the charge to educate and activate themselves for reparations at the state level. We are closer to reparations than we've ever been. We're also in the middle of, let's say, a political fight, a political war for reparations right now. I'll talk more about that too. But before we talk more about that, let's talk a little about how we got here. So how did we get here? So in 2019 and 2020, then Assembly Member Dr. Shirley Weber, now of course California Secretary of State Dr. Shirley Weber, wrote a bill and then helped to pass a bill to create California's first ever and the country's first ever reparations task force. So we were the first state to do this in 2019 and in 2020. And then in 2021, that task force started to do some work. And that task force had 2 years to do 3 things. 2 years to do 3 things. First, study reparations with a focus on what California is responsible for. Study reparations, focus on what California is responsible for. Let me ask, was there even slavery in California? Was there even slavery here?
Yes.
Okay, all right, people are nodding their heads, okay. So the answer is yes, if you didn't know. There was slavery in California. There were over 1,000, close to 2,000, probably more, African American enslaved here in the state of California. That is even after California became a state. And quite frankly, we just put a video on our Instagram page yesterday or the day before yesterday with some reporting coming out of the Sacramento area about the story of a young woman named Edith. We don't know her full name. So a 12-year-old girl who was, there was an attempt to sell her to some other, to a farmer in the Sacramento area in 1864. 1864. That is about a year after the Emancipation Proclamation. About a year afterwards. So, her case is not uncommon, unfortunately. There were enslaved African Americans, Black Americans here in the state of California. That's after California became a state, and even after the Emancipation Proclamation. California also, is anyone familiar with the 14th Amendment to the Constitution? So that's the amendment that said that everybody has equal protection. It's called the Equal Protection Clause. That was started or created by our government in the 1860s. California did not agree with that or ratify that amendment until 1959, almost 100 years later. Okay. The 15th Amendment, that was the one that said that everybody is, that was the amendment that gave and extended voting rights to basically every male who was not white. Okay. That was passed in like 1860s. Anybody want to guess when California ratified or agreed to that? The 1960s. Okay. 1962. Okay. So job number one of this state task force, right, was to study reparations with a focus on what California was responsible for. Some of the other things that the task force helped to uncover in its study was the fact that, let's say in the 1920s or so, there were more KKK meetings here in the state of California than there were in Louisiana, Texas, and Mississippi combined. Okay. If you think about the health and the well-being of our children, and specifically our babies, one of the other things that the state task force uncovered in its work and in its study, again, job number one, right, to study reparations with a focus on what California is responsible for. One of the other things that the task force uncovered was the fact that this is current, that right now, black babies, specifically black babies who are descendants of persons who were enslaved in this country, die at a higher rate than they did in the 1850s during slavery. So I'm going to say that again. Right now, our children, our infants, die at a higher rate now than they did during slavery. Job number one, study reparations with a focus on what California is responsible for. All of these things that the task force studied and learned, and there's much more, were included in one of its reports, specifically its final report that it released last year. We'll talk a little bit about that too. Job number one, study reparations. Job number two, educate the public. What we say, as we say, bring knowledge to the people. So part of how the task force did that was they went to a bunch of community organizations and said, hey, we need some help raising awareness, sharing information, and can you help us? And so our organization was one of them, and in 2022 we were chosen as one of the 7 community organizations that the task force chose to work with it to help raise awareness about reparations. The task force also hosted 16, I believe, public hearings from different cities in California. 16 different hearings. Each hearing was 8 hours long and for 2 days. Yeah. So 2 days, 8 hours each day. We went to every single one of them, to be honest with you. So bring education, bring knowledge to the people. And the third job of this first in the nation statewide task force was to make recommendations. Tell us what to do about the things that we don't like, about the history. How do we actually correct the mistakes or pay for the mistakes that we made as a state, cities, counties, etc. And the task force did that by putting together over 100 different plans, ideas, proposals for for what the state could or should do. Now, we said the word reparations here probably, I probably said it 10 times. Matt probably said it 10, 20 times yourself. But what does that word even mean?
To repair.
To repair. Other thoughts?
Amends.
Amends. What does the word mean? Amends, repair, absolutely. Other ideas? Make up. Right. Correct.
Apology,
Compensation, okay. So, I'm asking this question on purpose because the state task force had a particular way of thinking about reparations when it did its work over the 2 years. So, according to the state task force, reparations has 5 pieces to it. So there's 5 pieces to something that you could call reparations, or before you could call something reparations, there's 5 pieces that you need. The first is compensation. Right? The first is compensation. The second is restitution. The third is rehabilitation. The fourth is what we call guarantees of non-repetition. And the fifth is what we call satisfaction. So, compensation, that's the easiest part to understand. That's the money. That's the checks. Darlene has the shirt on right now. Okay. Cut the check. Okay. All right. All right. I almost wore the hat. Okay.
And I almost wore that.
Right.
You guys bring some t-shirts?
No, but you'll be able to get them online. So, monetary, financial compensation. Okay. This is probably the most controversial part. I don't understand why as much. I mean, I kind of do, but I kind of don't too. Almost every reparations effort I've ever seen in my life involves some kind of compensation directly to the people who were injured. That was the case for our Japanese American brothers and sisters who received direct compensation, I believe about $20,000 each during the 1980s, late 80s. That was the case, and it is the case for our Jewish survivors of the Holocaust, received direct compensation. That was the case for many of our Native and indigenous brothers and sisters and groups too. It was the case when California itself, just in the last 2 or 3 years, paid out direct checks, direct compensation to victims of forced and involuntary sterilization. You may not know, California had a forced and involuntary sterilization program in state prisons where we forced and involuntarily sterilized women through the 1980s. In 2021, 2022, California passed a law saying we did wrong and we're going to directly compensate survivors of that horrible thing. Direct compensation. So compensation must be a part of any reparations. As we say, if it doesn't have compensation, it's not reparations. 2, restitution. The return of property, the return of land, or the restoring of us to the best we can to where we would have been, could have been, should have been, had not the bad things happened to us in the first place. Rehabilitation. You can think of these as the non-financial pieces, so free medical services, free legal services, free education, things like that. That's what we think of and we describe as rehabilitation. Fourthly, guarantees of non-repetition. These are changes to our systems, changes to our policies, changes to our laws to make sure that what happened to us never happens again. Finally, what we call satisfaction. Some folks think of these as a symbolic stuff. I think some of these could be thought of as symbolic, but these are things like a formal public apology from our state, acknowledging what they've done, admitting to what you did, changing our textbooks to make sure that the actual history of what actually happened is told, the removal of public displays of oppression and the replacing of those with things that represent our history, our culture. Compensation plus restitution plus rehabilitation plus guarantees of non-repetition plus satisfaction equals reparations, according to the general definition that the State Reparations Task Force used. And specifically, by law, the California Reparations Task Force was charged with developing those reparations recommendations I just mentioned, with recommendations in each one of those 5 pieces, each one of those 5 areas. And the task force did that. Many of those, pretty much, let's say many of those recommendations fit under one or more of those 5 pieces. So, that is what the task force did through June of 2023, when it ended its work, and it finished its work in June. In June of 2023. Okay. So that is largely how we got to where we are now. I'm going to talk more about where we are now, specifically and explicitly. But that is largely what was going on and what has been going on over the last 2.5 or so years, from June of 2021 through June of 2023. Now, I mentioned that we are not just closer to reparations than we've ever been, but that we are in the middle of a political fight, political war for reparations. Generally speaking, there have been 2, let's say, big battles for reparations in this political fight, this political war over the past several years. I'm going to just describe this and make this make sense for you. So, the first battle was in 2019 and 2020. This was the battle to create a reparations task force. It was a battle. It was a fight. We won that battle. We won that fight. But it was a battle and it was a fight to get a task force law or bill first written and have an author and a legislator who wanted to actually introduce it and fight for it, and then take it to all the committees and then get all the votes and then get it to the floor for votes and then get it to the governor's desk and then encourage the governor to sign. The governor waited until the last day that he had to sign bills to sign the bill, and it took a lot of motivation, shall we say, to motivate the governor to sign the law to create the task force. It took some pressure from celebrities. It took pressure from folks on the ground and grassroots. It took Ice Cube to call the governor. It took Maxine Waters to call the governor. And the governor signed the bill. But that was the first battle, the battle to create a state task force, to pass a law to create a state task force. That's battle number 1. We won that battle. Battle number 2. This was the battle to make this task force do the right thing. Make strong recommendations to fulfill its task, its 3 obligations, its 3 jobs, to do those three things. We won that battle. The task force made some really, really strong recommendations, specifically around who should be eligible for reparations. So I'll talk about that right now, but also what should reparations actually be? How much are the financial and monetary losses to this specific group of people, for those who are eligible, which I'll talk about right in a moment. What else should the state do? How else should the state fulfill those 5 different pieces of reparations? Who should be eligible? That was one of the first recommendations that the task force had to make. Who should be eligible? Now this was, to us, pretty clear, to us a no-brainer, but the task force still had to go through the work of actually making a decision. And in March of 2022, the task force decided, rightly so, that those who would be eligible for reparations in California, at least according in a part of this latest effort, would be those who are descendants of persons who were enslaved and then emancipated from chattel slavery in the United States. Specifically, also folks who are California residents. So you're a California resident and a descendant of someone who was enslaved and then emancipated from chattel slavery in this country, you are eligible for reparations in California's latest, or this particular California reparations effort. The task force made that recommendation. That was a good recommendation. That was part of what the task force recommended. How much in monetary compensation would or could folks be actually eligible for? Well, that was a tougher question, because how do you put dollars and figures around all that's happened to us? So it's probably, so I don't want to say there's no way to do it, because the team of economists that work with the task force actually did it. They put some dollar figures around it, but I know it was hard for them. I know it was hard for them. Generally speaking, though, the task force recommended, or the task force told the public and the state that just around or across a few areas of harm that they looked at, the state took about $800 billion in wealth from this particular group of eligible Californians. So the financial monetary losses to our community and the financial monetary gain for the state, which is, sometimes we don't talk about the gain part too, right? For every loss, there was for everything that was taken, there was a receiver of what was taken. $800 billion, about $1 trillion in losses over and across a few different areas, not even the full sort of list of areas. Other recommendations too, right? So we won this second battle for the task force to make strong recommendations. Right now, and this brings us to where we are now, we are in the beginning of the third major battle for reparations. And that is the battle to actually make reparations and pass reparations law. So it's one thing to pass a law to create a task force. It's another thing for that task force to make recommendations. It's a whole other thing for us to actually pass laws to do reparations. To pass laws that say this group is going to get this amount of checks over this amount of time, or we're going to change this to do this for this group. To actually do the things that are in that final report, that are in those 100 recommendations, to pass laws to do that, that is where we are now. We're in the beginning of what we call the battle of the bills. In the middle of 2023, as we mentioned, the task force finished its work about June of 2023. Then the task force gave their report with all those recommendations to the state Senate, to the state assembly, to the governor, and said, here's our work, boom, take this and make laws out of this. And so from June of 2023, really through January of this year, the state legislators, the state Senate, state assembly, and folks in the governor's office have been looking through the report and deciding which of the recommendations, which of the things that the task force recommended, they are going to take out and make laws for first, shall we say. So, is anybody here familiar with, well, let me just ask, who is the state senator who represents Mike McGuire? Senate Leader Mike McGuire.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Who is the state assembly member who represents this particular place and
Taman Connolly.
Connolly, okay. Okay. I'm glad y'all know. I'm really glad y'all know. Can anybody else tell me how many state assembly members there are in total? Total.
70.
Close. A little bit higher. 80. 80 state assembly members total. How many state senators total? Close, a little bit low. 40. 40. Okay. 80 state assembly members, 40 state senators. How many, so if we add that together, what's that, 120 total? Okay. These are the people who are going to be and who have been deciding and defining and creating bills for reparations. Can anybody tell me of those 120 people, how many of them self-identify as Black or African American?
3.
Higher, but you're not that far away. 5 is higher, you're not that far away. 12. 12 out of 120. Okay. 12. And this group of 12, we call them, they have a name, we call them the California Legislative Black Caucus. Okay, the CLBC, California Legislative Black Caucus. So in the legislature, there are all kinds of caucuses and groups and stuff. So the 12 black folks who are state senators, the assembly members, make up the California Legislative Black Caucus. So in June of 2023, there was a warm handoff of this report, again, to the entire state legislature and the governor's office, but specifically and particularly to the California Legislative Black Caucus to take the lead on the development of some of the bills and some of the legislation. And in, I want to say, late January through let's say mid-February, we started to see, for the first time ever, some bills based on recommendations from the State Reparations Task Force. Actually, some of you have the, if you have this card here. Okay, good. So on the one side of that card, brother, you got one too? Okay, cool. Yep, perfect. On one side of that card is some information about one of the bills. On the other side of that card is some information about one of the other bills. Now, there were probably 20 or so bills. 20 out, let's say between 20 and 30 bills. Now let me stop right here. This is also why, and as we started, we've said we've never been closer to reparations before. This is also why, it's also partly why we've never had bills introduced to even try to do reparations at the state level. In California's history and in the country's history, never. So as soon as we saw bills starting to be introduced, we had crossed and passed another historical marker. So there are about 20 or so different bills that the State Legislative Black Caucus introduced, put out for the public to see. And some of those bills we liked, some of those bills we didn't like. Okay? And we're talking about why we didn't like some of those bills and what we did like. The cards you have in your hand are bills we actually like. Okay? So are two bills that we do like. One of those bills is Senate Bill 490. This is a bill introduced by, and as you can see, State Senator Stephen Bradford, young brother. State Senator Stephen, you got it. State Senator Stephen Bradford out of the LA area. This is a bill to create some systems and some infrastructure to get the state set up to do other things later. So specifically, this bill creates a reparations agency, a specific place in our government for people to go to apply for reparations, to show that they're eligible, to get their claims processed, their payments processed, to get direct services, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a good bill. We like this bill. Every reparations effort I've seen, there's some sort of system set up to do the things. That was the case for our Japanese American brothers and sisters, as we talked about earlier. There was an office called the Office of Redress, and I'm going to blank on the rest of the name, but an office specifically set up to do the reparations for the Japanese American brothers and sisters. Similarly, I believe in the case of our Jewish survivors of the Holocaust, there were, I think, 4 different offices, agencies set up in different parts of the world specifically to do the things that needed to be done. Same is the case for our indigenous brothers and sisters, our native and indigenous brothers and sisters, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, et cetera. Specific agencies, specific offices are set up to support the reparations. So this would be our version of this, and the name of the agency is the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency. California American Freedmen Affairs Agency. American Freedmen is a term that many of you may be familiar with if you're familiar with the Freedmen's Bureau from back in the Reconstruction era. This was a bureau specifically set up during Reconstruction to help us. It was sabotaged and all kind of bad things happened to it. This is a state level version of that. So this is one bill, again, Senate Bill 490. One of the other, let me just give a quick status update on Senate Bill 490. So right now it is sitting and parked in the Assembly Judiciary Committee and will be going up for hearings. We don't expect this month, potentially next month, but probably sometime in early May. So there'll be some hearings on Senate Bill 490 within the next, let's say, month and a half or so. Very important bill, very important piece of legislation. Never seen anything like it at the state level. The second bill that we liked, and I'm gonna actually turn this around, is Senate Bill 1331. 1331. This is a bill also introduced by State Senator Stephen Bradford, and this is a bill to create an actual fund and a funding source for reparations. So I used to get a lot of questions. I probably still get some more questions here too about where's the money come from, Chris? Where's the money coming from, Chris? And so this partly helps to answer that question. So this bill would create a California Reparations Fund inside of our state treasury that would be funded by, I believe the percentage is 6% of all of the funds that go into one of our special funds. So let me make this make sense, because this is kind of complicated. California has a $250, $300 billion budget every year. We spend about $250 billion every year as a state. That's our state budget. About $250 billion every year. We have a general fund, what we call a general fund. It's about $250 billion in there. And then we have some special funds on the side of that. One of the special funds you may be familiar with is called the Rainy Day Fund. If you've heard of the Rainy Day Fund, that is a fund that we have that we put extra money in and set money aside for. There's some other special funds too. Generally speaking, the California Reparations Fund would receive funds from these special funds, okay, continually. As often as funds go into the special funds, as often as funds go into the California Reparations Fund. And I believe it's about 6% to start. So this creates a funding source for reparations. So this is a bill that we like. It's Senate Bill 1331, again, introduced by State Senator Stephen Bradford. You can actually read the bill yourself if you scan the code on the cards that you have in your hands. So there are, as I mentioned, about 20 different bills. I want to talk to you about some of the bills that we don't like. Okay. All right? Because I think we have to talk about this. I think we have to talk about it in a couple of different ways. One, because it helps us understand what is reparations and what is not reparations. And two, I think we have to talk about this because there's an important piece that I didn't mention when I talked about those 5 pieces of reparations. What I didn't mention is that anywhere you go in the world, the group that is the source, or not the source, but is the group that was harmed, is supposed to be telling the government or the parties who did the harm what we want the repair to be. We as descendants, we as the group harmed, are supposed to be leading and telling the doers of the harm what we want to be paid, or what we want our repair to be. Keep that point in mind. What we don't like, or some of the bills that we didn't like in what we saw from the CLBC, are bills that, for example, there is one bill that would stop CDCR, which is the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, from banning books. Now, I love your reaction, okay?
What?
Okay, what is the right word? Okay, so that might be a good idea, might not be a good idea, I'm not sure, but it's clearly it's almost insultingly not reparations. One of the other bills is a bill to stop. Again, I'll stay with CDCR for a moment, with the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Stop CDCR from forcing labor in prisons. Okay? Now, this is a good idea. California, as you may know, has the same exception to involuntary servitude and slavery in our state constitution that our federal government has in the 13th Amendment. Right? So 13th Amendment says slavery is prohibited, period, involuntary servitude is prohibited, comma, except as punishment for a crime. That was a way to continue slavery after slavery. Our state has the same version of that in our state constitution. We want to stop that. We should stop that. It's not reparations though. Stopping slavery or ending slavery, ending current day slavery is not reparations. As we say, ending slavery is ending slavery. One of the other bills is a bill to allow California to do affirmative action again, which we stopped in 1996, I believe, through Proposition 209. Okay? May or may not be a good idea, depending on who you are, depending on who you ask. It's clearly not reparations, though, even if you thought it was a good idea. We say, peace, what's going on? Clearly not reparations, though, okay? So, all in all, there are about 20 or so bills, as we mentioned, about 20 or so bills. Right? Some of them we liked, some of them we don't like. Right now, our big focus is on the bills and the things that we do like. And these are two bills that we do like right now. Now there is one last thing I'll say and then I will wrap it up. So, what's coming next? So one, as I mentioned, hearings and votes on these bills will be coming up pretty soon. Actually, as I mentioned, SB 490, SB 490 will probably be being heard in our state legislature within the next month and a half or so. Senate Bill 1331, though, which would create the California Reparations Fund, that bill was just referred to committee 2 days ago. So likely that bill will be heard sooner rather than later, probably within the next several weeks or so, if I had to guess. So that's exactly where we are right now, fighting for the things that we like, and we've said and we've told the state legislative Black Caucus everything that I've said here. We've said to them directly, we like this bill, we don't like that bill, we like this, we don't like that. And that is part of, as I mentioned before, us as the actual group who this is for, telling our state government what we want our repair to be. That is a very important point. So, I want to do a call to action before we go. So if we could, before we go to questions rather. So if we could, everybody got their cell phone? This is gonna be the one time where we actually take out your cell phone, all right? Let's actually take some action right now. Okay, let's take some action right now. I know a lot of times, and this is a point that we make at almost every event that we do, where we actually do action while we're there. Okay? So, so not yet, but good thinking. So go to however you go to the internet, whether it's Chrome or you Internet Explorer, however you go on the internet. I want you to go to our website, cjec-official.org.
Well, I can't get it here.
Yeah, I can't get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Terrible.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes a bad reception in this building here too.
Oh, yeah, my phone nationality is
No. Right on. No worries at all. So, no worries. Okay. It's on the card. You have two. If you can scan
Wi-Fi, yeah.
Yeah, so let's see if you can try by scanning the card.
The dark card.
The white card. So take a look at the white card. You got the white card that you got. That's okay. We're gonna workshop this together. Scan the code on the white card. Two.
Yeah, the white one.
There's a CSD guest,
Yeah.
Wi-Fi that I just joined, password.
Oh, nice.
Scan the code. The first thing we're gonna do, now if you're not able to do it now, that's fine too, right? But make sure you do it today. The first thing we want to do is actually sign up for current, accurate California reparations news and information. We have newsletter that we put out pretty much every month. We send out text messages pretty much every single month. And our website's a really good source of info also.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, mine will come up.
All right, no
What do you
worries,
want
no
us to
worries.
do about it? I mean, what is the instructions, so when I do leave, I can do it?
So go to the site and sign up for, so scan the other code. Scan the code that says get reparations news, but that's the right, that's the right.
Okay, got it.
All right, you got it, good, good, all right. You good, all right, you good? Everybody's good? Okay, we're gonna workshop it together. Scan the code that says get reparations news. All right. Good stuff, good stuff. Sign up for our newsletter. So put your email in there. It's gonna ask you if you wanna get text too, sign up for the text message list. And also, there's a box to check to say, I want to volunteer. Check that box. Held our last new volunteer orientation about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And there's another one coming up sooner rather than later. All right, boom, there you go. Perfect. Okay. All right. So that's the first thing we're gonna do is sign up. And this is important. One of the best things you can do right now is to make sure that you are connected to good information, because there's a lot of information coming out about reparations, and we want to make sure that you're connected to good, accurate, current information. So make sure you sign up on the site. Okay. Question?
I read the Cal Matters and they report on
Yes. Shout out to Cal Matters. Yes, and so Cal Matters is a great source. I just spoke to somebody from Cal Matters, I think yesterday actually. Cal Matters is a great source. Make sure you also are signed up for our newsletter also, because we'll get you stuff that we're going to send to Cal Matters later. And so you get it before Cal Matters gets it. But so that's the first thing. Okay. Second thing, so if you're on the website, stay on the website. Look for the menu button, the the menu button, and look for the Take Action page. Should be a page called Take Action. Okay. When you get to the Take Action page, there are going to be 2 actions that you can take really right now. The first is action 2, contact the California Legislative Black Caucus. I'm hearing text coming right on. Okay. Good stuff.
I'm trying to catch up.
Right on, no worries at all, all right? No rush. The first action will be an action to contact the California Legislative Black Caucus and let them know that we expect, that we want more bills with direct, specific, targeted, what we call tangible financial, monetary benefits in them. Okay? So it may or may not be a good idea to do a book banning bill at some point. Okay, I don't know. Okay? But that ain't reparations. Okay. It may be a good idea to do affirmative action, maybe not. I don't know. But that ain't reparations.
That's right.
Okay. It may be a good idea. I'm going to talk now. There's one of the other bills that were in the 20 bills is a bill to do a formal public apology. Okay.
That's nice.
Apologies are good, but it ain't reparations.
That's right.
Okay. So this call to action that you're looking at now, this first one is really about contacting the California Legislative Black Caucus and telling them what we expect in our reparations bills, what more we expect in our reparations bills. The second action on that same page, and by the way, if you click that Take Action button, it'll take you to another page where an email and contact information is already there. So all you have to do is read the email, make sure you like what it says. You can update it too. You can put your own thoughts on it. You click one more button, and it will send it to every single member of the California Legislative Black Caucus for you, all 12 of them. Okay? In one shot. There you go. Okay? In one shot. Okay, all 12 of them get it. All right. The second action on this page, and we're going to wrap up right here. The second action on this page is an action that will help you contact your state senator. In this case, Senate Leader Mike McGuire, which is an important person. Senate Leader Mike McGuire, and tell him that you support Senate Bill 490, which is the bill to create a reparations agency, that you want him to support it as well. So that's that second action, and again, you click one or two buttons. That may ask you for some address information and some like contact information too. So it may ask you for it. When you get to the point about address, you don't have to put your exact address in there. It's just trying to figure out who your state senator is. So it needs your location basically to figure out who your state senator is. Right? So anybody can do this from wherever they are without having to know who their state senator is. Okay. Lastly, take one more minute here. A little bit more about what's coming next. So as I mentioned, we are at the beginning of this third battle. How long is this third battle going to take though? Right? How long? Okay. So I get triggered when I hear folks talk about 10 years and 20 years. Nope. I would like to be doing other things with my life. Okay? As much as I love reparations, as much as I love y'all, this work. And this is part of what I think is also part of our story too. We do spend a lot of our time and lives trying to fix what happened in the past, as opposed to living our best lives, just being human beings and just doing life. So, right. So, I expect that we will pass some significant reparations legislation this year. Okay. Specifically, we want these two bills passed to start. Okay. We see these two bills as the prerequisites of what you need to get to the checks. What do you need to get to the checks and to the direct compensation? You need, preferably, an agency or office to administer the program of checks and direct compensation. Yeah, so you have a bill for an agency. Preferably you need a fund and a funding source. You have a bill for a fund and a funding source. The fourth thing you need, so that's three things, so an agency, a fund, and a funding source. The fourth thing you need is an actual program. So we need a bill that says there is hereby established the California American Freedmen Direct Compensation Program to be administered by the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency with funding from the California Reparations Fund, etc. So that's what's missing right now. That legislation and language and a bill to create an actual compensation program. If we don't see that this year, okay, my expectation is that we're going to see it either late this year or early next year. That's my expectation. Right? So I want to stop there. Questions, thoughts, comments, feedback. Hey.
The 12 members of
Yes.
the caucus, the Black Caucus.
Yeah.
Do you have any sense of how, they're moving through their, the Senate and the Assembly and getting the buy-in of, their other members?
Yeah, great question. And so I do have a sense, and I'll share what that sense is, and it's an important question. So when we told the caucus, hey, we don't like this bill, we like that bill, we don't like this one, we like that one, why did you start with these bills and not other bills? Why did you pick these proposals and not other ones? What they told us was, they told us two things. One was, well, we didn't choose bills that had direct payments in them, direct compensation in them, because California can't afford it right now. Okay. I'm going to put that to the side for a second, because that is, I want to come to that, and I want to help you understand how to answer something like that. But the other reason they told us was to your question, that they told us that they want more time to help educate their fellow members. They want more time. And so they said, we're going to pick stuff that we think are what we call easy wins or low-hanging fruit. This is the phrase that they use to us directly, so that we can use these easy wins to help educate our other members and then encourage them to start small, and then maybe then they'll want to do more later. Okay? We rejected that idea, okay? But one of the bills that they have been using as a tool to help educate their members, the other members, is the bill that is a formal public apology. Specifically, it's called ACR 135, if you're interested. Assembly Concurrent Resolution, not important, 135. This is a resolution that says, this is all the things that California did, whereas California did this, whereas California did that. Be it resolved, we, as the state of California, are sorry for what we did, and we affirm our right to do more or do better. And so the state senators, the folks in the caucus are trying to use things like that, bills like that, to help educate their fellow members. We rejected, though, the idea that this is the best approach. We think, we want them to come out swinging, come out kicking and swinging, pulling and scratching, and come out strong. Okay? We have told them that we would have preferred if you used the strongest bills you could to do that education. So let's start with a direct payments bill and let's use that to educate. Okay? Let's start with something strong and let's use that to educate. Okay? They chose a different path, right? But that's what we've heard. And the other thing we heard, as I mentioned, is that, well, we didn't do the direct payments bill now because California can't afford it. Of course, completely reject that. California, as I mentioned, we spend about $250 billion every year. We have a $300 billion budget every single year. We're the 4th largest economy on planet Earth. We have heard there's a budget deficit of some kind. We've responded with the saying that we are not the people who you only do stuff when you have extra money. We're not the I'll only do this for you when we have extra money kind of people. We deserve as much space in that $250 billion, $250 billion budget as anybody else, if not more. So make some room for us in the $250 billion. But that hopefully answers the question.
So, didn't some other states pick it up to start reparations?
Yes.
Namely?
New York State passed a bill to create a reparations commission last year. Illinois.
Chicago. New York. Pay attention.
Yep.
All these people coming in, where they sending them to?
Okay, so Chicago.
And New York.
So actually, Illinois. So Illinois has a state reparations task force too. They were actually the second state. So Illinois was the second state.
As long as they're if it's adapted like California's, as long as they're descendants of a slave, they could get reparations too. But and of course they are, and by the billions. I just find that funny.
Yeah. So, and you're pointing to, I think, an important point here too. So Illinois, which is a state in the Midwest, obviously.
And that's why they're stalling up.
Well, California is still, and that's a good point too. California is still ahead of every other state.
I know that. I mean,
light years ahead of the federal
not
government.
like stalling that way, but you just brought up the 2 points why they chose this and that, because we want to educate.
Right.
So we got to educate these other states because they really are the mops. They're following what California is doing.
Right. And it's important that we actually.
Sometimes we can't slip them things through the cracks.
True. And to your point, it's important that we set the right example for the other states. It's important that we set the right example. So we have made it clear, I think, in the caucus, folks in the Black caucus, have gotten the message that, generally speaking, we want better. Okay, and that's an important part of the fight right now, where we are right now, which is regular folks telling our elected officials what we want our repair to look like. And that's an important piece of this puzzle. As you mentioned, Illinois is number 2. The second state, New York, passed a bill to do a state task force, state commission last year. Different states are doing it differently though. I know for example, for the folks in New York, at least a lot of folks that we talked to, they were not happy with the New York state process and the New York State Commission and how it was put together. What you're watching right now is cities and counties and states try to figure this out ourselves. Right? Practice some stuff, get some stuff right, get some stuff wrong, all learning, and hopefully and eventually the federal government will take some steps forward too. We go here, then I'll go, you have a question, brother? Here, yeah, that'll be good.
So I'm part of a coalition that helped pass the HOME Act, which would have ended ICE cooperation with CDCR, cooperative
Okay.
ICE. Sailed through this legislature. Governor, I'm not running for President Newsom. Veto. So what's your strategy should he do that?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So because so as I mentioned, we're in the beginning of this third battle, right? The battle of the bills. We're about this legislative session is 10 months long. We're about 10 weeks in. Okay, so we're about 10 weeks into this battle. So the battle of the bills. The first part of this is to get the bills passed. So passed by the majority of the state Senate, state assembly, and then signed by the governor. Okay. So there's a few things that we're doing that I can share publicly. Okay. So the first is we're making sure that we have strong support in the state legislature itself. Because the governor, for those of y'all who know or don't know, he can kill your bills before they get to his desk. Okay. He can make a call to somebody, one of his allies in the Senate leader, some leadership, and say, listen, I don't want this bill to come to my desk for some reason. It happens every year on a number of different bills and stuff. So the first thing that we're doing is making sure that we have strong support, specifically among Senate leadership, among Assembly leadership, among the caucus itself, and among the rest of the members to make it so that we actually get to the governor's desk. Okay. The second thing that we're doing is working to make sure that support is so overwhelming that either the governor is under too much pressure to not sign the bills, or that the threat of an override of a veto is possible also. Okay. So let me just make this plain a little bit for the folks here too. So the governor, when he doesn't sign your bill, the governor can veto your bill. So we get Senate Bill 490 passed, it gets to the governor's desk, we get 1331 passed, it gets to the governor's desk, the governor can say, nope, veto. Okay. But you can override that veto. With enough support from the legislature, that veto can be overturned. Okay. So the idea is to make sure it's a tougher thing, right? It's tougher, but it's not impossible. Now, I don't expect that we'll have to use that weapon, but we have to be prepared to use it, and it has to be ready to be used.
That's right.
No matter what.
That's right.
That's part of what we're doing.
I think it's, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So, just hypothetically, neither bill goes through, no veto override possible. What's plan B at that point? Are you back to accepting kind of the incremental, low-hanging fruit approach?
No, but good question though. So what do we do in the eventuality that we're not successful with Senate Bill 490 or 1331 this year? Well, the first thing we're not going to do is give up. So we're not going to give up. And we've seen this in some of the other work that we've done too, where we had a bill that was not specifically about reparations, but we in 2021 and 2022, we wrote legislation and the governor actually signed it later, that makes California start to collect data on descendants of persons who were enslaved in the United States. If you don't know, California wasn't even counting us as people up until a few weeks ago, actually, early this year. There was no specific category of data collection. There's no box you could check to say that you are descendant of someone who was enslaved in this country. On any state forms, on any city, county forms. In 2021, we wrote legislation to change that. It got all the way to the governor's desk. The governor vetoed it. Okay? And he said, and usually when the governor vetoes your bill, he'll put out what they call a veto message or veto statement explaining why he vetoed it. And so we read the veto statement, we read the veto message, and then we said, okay, these are the reasons. We're going to fix all those reasons and come back and see if you were really, being honest. And we came back the next year, and the governor said, okay, we like this better now. Now we'll do it. And so then the governor signed it the next year. So one thing that's important to keep in mind is that sometimes you don't win on the first shot. And we have to be prepared for that as a people and as people who care about this. That sometimes in a fight, you get punched in the face too. Right? When you're in a fight, you get hit too. Right? You don't go into a fight and don't get hit. Even Floyd Mayweather get hit. He may be blocking them and very good at not getting hit. But if you are in a fight, you're going to take some punches too.
That's right.
Okay? That's just what happens. You should expect to take some punches. So we expect to take some punches, but we ultimately expect to win.
Okay.
Other questions before we wrap up? All right.
I just want to add, I went to a reparations at the University of Illinois in Urbana in February when I was there. My friend knows that I'm really interested in this, so she made arrangements for us to go. And the assembly person, I think her name was Carol Ammons, I couldn't understand, hearing in the room wasn't that great, but they said that it was going to be on a YouTube video, and her name is Carol Ammons, I think.
Carol Ammons?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure she said, she was talking about all the way back to the 1400s and how
That's right.
the Catholic Church and the popes were involved in it too. Yeah, so I want to go back and listen to that, but I haven't.
Thank you for saying that, and no, thank you for saying that. I'll say this lastly. So, one thing to be clear about here too is that we are right now focused very much on our state government, and what our state government is responsible for, not individual people, not specific individuals, but specifically what our state government is responsible for. Right? We also think that anywhere and everywhere where there was harm, there must be repayment for that harm. So if the city did something wrong, the city's got to pay. If the county did something wrong, the county got to pay. The state did something wrong, the state got to pay. Of course, the federal government also as well. So
The town too.
right,
State too.
right. The academic institutions, some of the religious organizations, etc.
Oh yeah.
But we're starting right now with our state government, and we're actually, I think, going in the right direction.
And I think you're right. I think it was Pope Leo X or something that authorized reducing all infidel and dark people.
What was their name? What was the name they did that? Oh, I. We still saying black though.
So well, that's all right. But we talk about the same people and the same things. There's a lot of different names for it. All of this in 2024. All things that used to be that's come to be. But the important thing is for us to keep in mind we're talking about the same thing. In the same way this Pope issued this papal bull or whatever they called it, I want to repeat this thing because it came so clear to me of how so many of our colleges and universities were founded and supported by monies from the whole slavery institution, right?
Sure.
Which means it was taught there. So all of these fine minds that come out of these colleges, they go out to become lawyers, doctors, teachers, judges, what have you, right?
That's right.
And a lot of times they don't even see it as racism, it's just what they were taught in school. It's like a teacher that comes out of school that's never had any exposure to black history, but he or she is, or he is teaching in a school that's predominantly black students. So that teacher is not necessarily racist in that sense, but the expectations is different because college educated, there's nothing in their head that says black people made these contributions and these black kids should be proud. So this, just in understanding how this stuff has lasted this long, it's been taught, right? And when a little black kid sits in school right now for 12 years and hears nothing about our contributions, the same time I'm sitting there, my good buddy Mike is sitting there too, right?
Yeah.
He's getting the same message. I like Malik, but his people have never done it. I don't, you know. And he ain't racist. He just don't know no more than me. We both get that. So anyway, it's out of all of this, win, lose, or draw will come a greater education for the people who participated in the fight.
That's right.
And that's what's important at this point, that we do fight, and it's going to be important that we have all the names and email addresses or whatever of these elected officials, right? Because they all going to need pressure, including the black ones. Because part of what happens is even black people that we send to Congress and the legislature and other places to represent us, right? They become co-opted and they become more worried about offending their fellow elected officials than they are about representing. We told you to do this, and you come back telling us what they told you. Never mind what they told you. You're supposed to go and represent the people who sent you there. And so these are the same kind of people, and I'll end on this. They had a thing during slavery called mandatory manumission, meaning if we were sitting here as a group, especially all black, or a group of black and white people that were going to help us to escape, right? Then if somebody sneaked and went and told on us, that person was rewarded. It was called mandatory manumission. So those people exist, whether they're just here on the ground, or whether they're in the legislature, or whether they're in the mayor's office, or wherever. So we have to be watchful of all of them, and it ain't just based on on this. Why did you go tell, man? What is wrong? Anyway, thank you all for coming. We got food left over here, right? So you can take something with you. And, you know, the organizing has got to continue. We'll be in touch. This is our friend right here, ATN. ATN, is this going to be available for people to watch, or is it just live?
You go to that link that I sent you.
Right.
It's recorded.
It's recorded. So at any time, people will be able to go there
and watch it.
Okay.
It's on my channel because, you know, I didn't have time to set it up, but it's on my channel. On my page.
Wherever it's at, as long as we can get to it, right?
Yeah.
And I'll try to send out the link again to people that didn't get it, so they can go back and look over certain of the things that were said. You know, because it's education. It's just education. It's just education, right? And like I said, people have to be alert, watchful, you know, on guard, right? Because sometimes even, you know, whites who support black causes, you're attacked more by those same elements than we are, right? And when I was in Louisiana, they used to call them Negro lovers, right? And that was a hard thing for people to have to carry, right? So they either joined the group or they just kept quiet about the atrocities that were taking place, right? So this is a spiritual reawakening as well as give us a check. So thank you all.
Appreciate
Some
you.
water.
Let the librarians worry about the banning of the books.
Yeah, but yeah, that'll run out the door. Yeah, that, and you can see a whole list of their bills, so we got them on our website, but yeah, that was.
Yeah, I'm not reading it. Thanks, Louise. Oh, I wanna give you this.